Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanee and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Wonderfully well. How are you guys?
You too? Yeah.
Lovely, lovely.
Yes, I'm touch tired, and that's to do with being overcommitted on everything I do. But other than that, I'm good. And like Clarkey, I've hit that 5:23 moment, and I've got a drink for myself. But we'll get to that in a moment. What about you, Swanee? Any news? Anything?
I don't think I do, actually. No, everything's just plodding along. We're about to embark on school holiday, so the kids have just come home. And
your favourite time of year?
Yeah, a little bit like that. But yeah. No, nothing to report. No.
I'll introduce us. I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanee.
And I'm Clarkey. And together we are
Trial by
Wine.
And what are we drinking?
Well, I love to disappoint you. I've just opened, it's a budget day today. I'm on a bottle of Woolworths soda water.
Cost of living crisis.
I know.
Oh, look, you both got it.
It's not as good as Aldi's one. The Regal.
Oh, no, I'm sure. Mine must be cheaper than yours, I'm sure. Surely
it's Aldi.
Would Aldi be cheaper than Woolies?
$1 maybe?
Yeah.
$1 something? Yeah, Aldi's always cheaper than Woolies. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't think you could get much cheaper than a bottle of soda water. It's one of the cheapest things in the supermarket.
True that, yes. So you're on soda water just straight?
Yep.
Oh, okay. And Clarkey, what are you drinking?
So we had a couple of weeks in Melbourne for work doing training, and my new work does wine time on Fridays and some other days. But they like to have Pinot. And so we got stuck into a couple of Pinots. And so today we're having a Pinot, but it's a Pinot Noir, I should have said, not just Pinots. And it's a Red Claw from Mornington,
Lovely.
2023. Delicious. It's really nice, easy drinking, smooth. Nom, nom, nom. How about you?
I have made myself, with the aforementioned Aldi Regal soda water, I have made myself a hard-rated...
Oh, like a spritzer kind of thing.
Lemon. No, it's the same as those cans things that I made.
Oh, that's a syrup, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the SodaStream syrup.
Right.
Which is, it's zero sugar soda syrup. It's the solo flavour.
Yeah.
And I have put 30 mils, a standard serve of Absolute vodka in there. So I'm basically made my own hard-rated lemon lime drink.
Your balls are amazing. That's really good. I like it.
My balls?
Balls? What?
Yeah, your amaze balls.
Oh, right.
I was like, what?
We were both confused by that.
A little, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's me. I have a story. Does anyone want to hear it?
Oh, go on then.
Yeah,
no,
go on.
Yeah. No.
Why not?
Should we to.
Regale us.
Yeah, just want to kick back and shoot the breeze instead? No, I'll tell you a story.
Let's talk crimes and shit.
Okay, well, I'll tell you one first and then we'll see how you feel.
Show me yours and I'll show you mine.
So I was going to do a couple of stories because I didn't think that my first one would have enough meat on the bones. But as it turned out, actually, I found out it did. So
you got stuck into the marrow. There was something else there.
I picked at it. I picked and picked.
Oh.
Yeah. The story I'm going to cover, though, today is about the pitfalls of the presumption of death. And I was thinking about how to introduce it, and it made me think about the word presume and its closely related word assume. Many years ago, back when I was working at Foxtel, I used to constantly use the saying, never assume. It makes an ass out of you and me, with a particular colleague of mine. And mainly because in assuming something that had been done led us into multiple examples of being wrong about that assumption and everything going tits up. And so I probably just said it to try and be nice, but it was through that frustration of, for God's sake, stop assuming. I don't know how many times I've said this. I'd heard the expression somewhere, and it seemed obvious to me that it would be obvious in its double meaning. But one day I asked her why we should never assume, for probably the 50th time, and her answer to me was because it makes a dickhead out of both of us. And it was at that moment that I realised that she had not understood that there was a wordplay with the spelling of assume.
Yeah.
And all the times I have said it, she just thought I was saying it makes us both look bad, which was also true, but, makes a dickhead out of both of us.
Was that a gym going, cream puff eating friend?
No, it wasn't.
Oh,
no,
okay.
No. It was someone that you would not have assumed, no pun intended,
would make that
mistake. But there you go. Then, in a subsequent job at Virgin in the UK, I continued to use the expression with another colleague who, whilst she actually did understand it, and I probably told her that funny anecdote about makes a dickhead out of both of us, she decided to pull some tricksy lawyer talk. And so she then started to say, I presumed, which I thought was quite funny, but totally missed the point about doing neither of those two things. Oh, sorry. It turns out that we presume a lot in life, and that can get us into trouble. Anyone who's watched crime shows on TV would know that the presumption of death is applied where a person has been missing with no proof of activity or life, i.e. we haven't found a body and we haven't found them alive, for 7 years. This is the case in Australia, the UK, and the USA. However, in Japan, it's 10 years, unless the person was over 80, where it's reduced to 5 years, because I think that they presume that they're not going to live much beyond 85 years old, even if they are still alive.
They're so practical, those Japanese.
Yeah. Rather terrifyingly, there are a series of cases where people have been declared dead, where we have the body, and later they've woken up at the funeral home. Though, from what I read, almost all of them subsequently died shortly after. So it's fair to say that the medical declaration of death in these cases was presumptive, if wrong. To quote Neva Altaj, never presume someone is dead until he's sporting a hole in his head. That's my motto. It even rhymes. And if you're wondering who the hell Neva Altaj is, she's a romance writer. And I've never heard of her either. I just looked up quotes around presume, and it kept coming up, never assume. And I was like, no, I want something about presumption. Okay, so onto my case. My sources are mamamia.com, tampabaytimes.com, Wikipedia, theguardian.com, thelatimes.com, cbsnews.com, time.com, a podcast called Crime Show, hosted by Emma Cortland, and the Philadelphia Daily News.
Solid list.
Very thorough.
Yep, good list. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Delimar Vera was born on the 5th of December 1997 in a cold Philadelphia winter. Delimar is the daughter of Luzaida Cuevas and Pedro Vera, and there really isn't much I can tell you about the household because there was really nothing on the background of her parents, so can't really help you there. So we start really on the 5th of December 1997. They did have a fairly extensive family, and as I said, Delimar was from Puerto Rico. I'm not sure about Pedro, but I'm probably. Luzaida, by the way, liked to call herself Luz. Luz or Luz. So I'm going to call her Luz for the rest of the story, pretty much. She had 2 sons, presumably to another father, though I think Delimar was the first child of the couple, so Luz and Pedro. And I think she was, at the time, this is Luz, she was about 25 when she had Delimar. At Delimar's birth, Pedro cut the umbilical cord, but did not sign the child's birth certificate. And you can read whatever you like into that.
He can't write, but he's good with scissors.
Was he married to somebody else, or are they a couple?
He's not married. They're not married. They're a couple. I have no idea why he didn't want to sign the birth certificate.
Weird.
He certainly did recognise the child as his own and father the kid and all that sort of stuff. But at the time, it'll make more sense in a minute why that was an important fact.
He just was offered after cutting the umbilical cord and went, no, I don't think I want any of this.
Still,
I'm good.
Oh, no. Actually, sorry. No, I take it all back. I read somewhere that it was to do with a misunderstanding. He didn't understand what he was being asked to do. And so, that was what later came out.
Nothing.
Well, I don't know how much English they speak. I know that Lucy.
I know that we just delivered our daughter, but that surely wouldn't relate to that, would it?
I also don't know if he had other children. So, I know Luz did, but he might not have had this experience before. And yes, maybe he was wary of signing official-looking documents for various reasons.
We got taught that in school, so I reckon that's fair. Don't sign anything unless you understand it. So
there you go. Yes,
smart bloke. Good on him. Not going to be caught up in the moment. I'm not signing this because I don't know what it says.
Don't know what it is.
About
I wait until my lawyer sees that.
No. Baby.
Not
signing. How do I know? Ah, the bebe.
Me baby. Okay. As it was a very cold winter and unfortunately the house had no heating, on the night of the 15th of December, just 10 days after the birth of Delimar, Pedro rigged up a heater in the baby's room and they put
Oh,
no.
Delimar down to sleep in the crib. Well, I think she was on the bed, actually. Again, there's lots of different versions of what actually happened. There were some family visiting or people visiting as it was close to Christmas, and Pedro was either going out grocery shopping or busy with some distant cousin by marriage whose name was Carolyn Correa. And she had apparently called him about fixing her tail light or her brakes. And as you could probably tell by now, there are quite different accounts of the car issue, but at any rate, she showed up at the house. At around 7 o'clock p.m., when Luz was talking to Carolyn, who was telling her that she'd also recently had a baby, Luz, and this is by Luz's definition of what happened, heard an explosion and ran upstairs to find the baby's bedroom engulfed in flames.
Oh, no.
Now, this is one version, and I've read about 6.
I'm hoping this is the most horrific version.
Me too.
Because
They don't just change according to a different person telling it. The actual players have different versions of events that are played out in the media. And so I'm not really clear on what happened. All we know is there's a fire. There's definitely a fire, 100%. I'm not sure whether or not she was having the chat with Carolyn at the time or she was back in the house in the lounge room. That was another option. But at any rate, she runs upstairs and the room's engulfed in flames. She tries to get into the room, but the heat and smoke were too much and she's forced back. And she actually sustained burns to her face in the process. Now, I understand she tried to enter the room twice, and it could be on the second instance that she got burned. I'm not sure. So she stood in the street as flames poured from the upstairs window, screaming, my baby, in Spanish. Mi bebe, mi bebe.
I was going to say,
I did look it up.
Bambino.
It's mi bebe. I looked it up. Okay, so a neighbour's son, Jose Rosario? Anyway.
Bloody hell.
I kept thinking of Rosario in Will and Grace just then. Yeah. Jose, a neighbour's son, Jose, tried to get up to the room also, but he was repelled by the intensity of the fire and the smoke. He said that he'd heard the baby crying, but he couldn't get past the smoke. However,
what?
However, Luz said that she tried twice to get the baby, and while she got burned, she didn't see the baby in the crib. She said she screamed at the firemen that her baby had been snatched, but no one would listen or understand her as she's from Puerto Rico, as I said, and speaks only a little bit of English. However, the fire marshal, Vince Heaney, who was at the scene, said he had Luz talk to Spanish-speaking firefighters 3 times. And she was adamant her baby was still in the room and didn't talk about her being stolen.
Anyone confused yet?
I'm following for now.
I'm just going to get my whiteboard out.
Well,
There's a lot of versions already, so I'm just trying to...
There are. And when we get to the end, it'll be no clearer. Okay?
Great.
Forewarned.
Just to prepare you for that.
us.
Yep. So the fire report had 2 remarks on it, which was DOA, 1 female approximately 1 week old, and injured 1 female approximately 20 years old with burns to face. The report also said the fire was caused by electrical wires of improper use of homemade extension cord, in point of fact.
That old chestnut.
Now, Pedro, at the time this was happening, was off with Carolyn, and he found out that the house was on fire, and he got back to the house toot sweet. The fire brigade had been called, and they had the fire under control within 14 minutes.
Wow.
However, when they searched for baby Delimar, there was no evidence of her, and the fire marshal determined she had most likely died in the fire and her remains had been destroyed.
And then left.
No, her remains had been entirely destroyed by the fire's intensity.
Going back to your earlier, your opening, I think there's an arse and a me somewhere in here.
There's a bit of an assumption that the baby was in the room, and to the point where they've said there's no remains because basically this tiny little baby was completely destroyed. All the organic material and bones were completely destroyed, so they couldn't find anything. At one point they thought they'd pulled out a blanket, but it was actually a melted massive mattress and stuff. So it was pretty extensive. They did try, this wasn't a cursory examination either. They did actually spend 2 days sifting through all the rubble to try and see if they could find anything. But they couldn't find anything to indicate that they'd found the baby's remains. But the assumption, or presumption if you like, was that Delimar had perished in the fire. Luz, however, was convinced that her baby had not died in the fire and had been stolen. But everyone else figured that she was in denial due to the horrific tragedy. As there were no remains, they didn't have a funeral, and the medical examiner's office couldn't issue a death certificate. No body, no legal death. So they were told they had to go to the court to apply for one, which, as we learned in that case about the guy in the kayak who faked his death, you actually can do. Remember the wife went off and got a certificate? Yeah. So Luz was distraught, but life went on, and she and Pedro moved to another house in the same neighbourhood, and they had a second baby in 1999, a boy they named Samuel. Luz remained convinced that her daughter had been stolen and wasn't dead, and according to others, Pedro also said he believed Delimar had been stolen from him. Or did he? So we'll fast forward 6 years.
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm enjoying this because I don't know where it's going.
Okay.
Surprise.
Things were not great between Luz and Pedro 6 years later. Eventually, he got sick of her talking about her stolen baby. She would rock a blanket to sleep at night, and that was the only one of the things that were reported. But I got the feeling she was pretty obsessed with this lost Delimar. But Pedro was over it, and their relationship was over. On the 24th of January...
That's sad.
It is, yeah, but it happens. It's not unusual.
I think it's common, yeah.
It's very common when
with those
people
sorts
have
of traumas.
some horrendous trauma, that's right. On the 24th of January 2004, Evelyn Vera, Pedro's sister, was throwing a birthday party for her 3-year-old granddaughter, and she decided to invite Luz, even though she and Pedro were over. But then again, they had a son together. They had Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
And so, she's still part of the family. There were a load of family members there that included Carolyn Correa,
that Carolyn.
She'd been at the house on the night of the fire. Carolyn's 6-year-old daughter, Alia, was at the party, and in what I think was a bit of a bitch move, Evelyn said to Luz, "Isn't Carolyn's daughter beautiful?" And allegedly she said, "She's not your baby."
But age-wise, she's the wrong age, isn't she? Haven't we gone from 97 to 2004?
We're 6 years forward.
We are 6 years, are we? 3 and 4. I did 7.
Whoa.
Okay, fair enough.
Remember, it was December 97.
Yes, fair enough.
Is she implying that
Yes, she
this
is.
baby
Well,
is
she denied
Delimar?
later. She completely denied later ever saying that Liz was a lunatic and none of this was true. So she's like, what? And I think she said something along the lines of, why would I say that? Like, it doesn't even make sense. What would I be trying to get out of that? It's just...
Who said that,
weird.
sorry?
This is Pedro's
Evelyn.
sister.
Evelyn said that
Pedro,
was not true. Okay.
Not the mother, Pedro's sister.
No, Pedro's sister, Evelyn.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. She said it. Got it.
And it was a weird thing to say if indeed she did it. But the other thing, whether or not that remark happened, that made Luz sort of pay attention to everything was she did notice that there was a remarkable likeness to herself as a young girl and Alia. And she had this thing about when Delimar was born, she had a little dimple on one of her cheeks. And this girl had the same dimple. So she decided that because there was
a
this
similar
dimple,
one or the same one?
Well, she thought it was the same. So she's very suspicious about this. And of course, being a student of crime shows on TV, Luz casually calls Alia over to her on the pretense that she had bubblegum in her hair and ripped out a chunk of the kid's hair.
Brilliant. DNA testing.
Well, 5 strands apparently.
That's
and
enough.
She bagged it up in a napkin and a plastic bag and set about finding someone to take her allegations seriously.
She's good.
Swanee, she's been studying at our university.
Absolutely. Where's the law and order? Ding dong.
Right, I know how this shit works.
Well, not quite, because you can't take evidence like that and ask someone to test it without their consent or the parents' consent. So you can't use it.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, only if you say whose it is. What if you say it's yours and you want to get your hair tested?
Yeah.
Well, can you just tell me whether or not my hair is related to my hair?
No, I just want to see. What you can get from it. I'm happy to pay.
Where would you take it anyway? I don't know.
Well, that's the point, right? Yeah. So
I don't know.
now she'd always had her suspicions about Carolyn. Yeah. As we know, she'd been at the house on the night of the fire, and Luz had always thought there was something off there. She also told people that Pedro had once told her that he wished the baby girl in my belly had died and had refused to search for her after the fire, telling her to accept the baby had died. Which, actually, if you think about it, not the first bit but the second bit, it's not that damning as it sounds, because if he really did believe that the baby had died and his girlfriend was obsessing with the idea of her being alive, as her grief or guilt couldn't let her accept it, it's not actually that odd that he took the position of, I'm sorry, you just have to accept this. This is the situation.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And it's also not weird that she was casting suspicion on Carolyn, as she didn't really know her, and she was at the house at the time, and she was on Pedro's side of the family, so not part of her trusted circle. Thing is, I read in one article that Carolyn had been to the house many a time, but from what I saw in, I think it was court documents, the suggestion was that she hadn't. She wasn't a close family member. She was related as a cousin by marriage to Pedro, so she was sort of on the very outer circle of the family onion, if you like, skin
The
layer.
family onion.
You know what I mean? Family onion.
I
you
do,
know,
but I haven't
on
heard
the
of it.
Yeah, I
outer.
do. I've never heard
Carolyn
that
was
before.
on the
though.
outer
So-
skin.
And a skin, right.
Is that a newly coined phrase, or is that one
It's
that
one
you've
of
heard
mine.
before?
I think it's
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Schmitty's.
Yeah, I like it.
Schmittyism.
I'm liking
yeah.
it. It's growing on me.
Yeah.
It's like a truth stretcher.
Yeah.
Family onion.
Yeah.
The outer skin of the family
Yeah,
onion.
onion.
Brother.
A metaphor maker.
We're much more potent. It's sort of like garlic, the family garlic, without all the ridges.
Now, Carolyn lived in New Jersey, and where she actually lived in New Jersey is about half an hour away from Philadelphia. And on the night of the fire, after the fire had happened, she got off to visit her boyfriend Andre Moore's mother with the baby that she'd recently given birth to. Now, I don't think I actually said this earlier, but that little conversation that she had with Luz on the doorstep on the night she was actually talking about how she had just given birth herself.
Yeah.
She just had a child. I don't know why, but it was reported by Luz as being an uncomfortable conversation. So I don't know why. And then shit kicked off with the fire, etc.
Did they see her frequently in the lead up to that night, or
Only one media outlet said that yes, that had happened, but all the others said no. She hadn't seen Carolyn
for
ever
9
before.
months? Kind
No,
of.
ever before.
Oh, ever
Oh.
before.
No, didn't know her. Yeah.
So why is Caroline ringing for help with her brakes? Is she close to
From
Pedro?
her cousin. So apparently Pedro, according to Carolyn, Pedro had rung her father because they were going to organise a game of dominoes. And I believe
Fuck,
dominoes
that sounds like fun.
I believe dominoes are actually
In
really
1997.
big in Puerto Rican
Oh, right,
communities.
right.
I believe
Oh,
it is
really?
a thing. Yes. So
Rightio.
that's
I
not
can't say
actually
we've
as
ever been
weird as it
invited to
sounds.
anyone to a Domino's night.
Cannot
or a Domino's.
confirm or deny.
I could be wrong about this, but I seem to call one of those weird shows with Josh Gates in it, My Secret Naughtiness,
Yeah.
that he was in Puerto Rico and he was talking about dominoes. So that's why I think that is a thing.
Well,
At any rate, they were going to play a game of dominoes, and he has a conversation with Carolyn and says, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Nothing." Blah blah blah. Anyway, then so they are obviously in contact because he's talking to her dad, and she's rocks up about her headlights or brakes or whatever. So This is what I mean. There's a real inconsistency about the backstories
I need to
on a
get
lot
my
of this.
calculator out because something's not adding up.
Okay, so of course the baby that she had recently given birth to was Alia Hernandez. We're going to have another twist in the story. No
Do we
pun
know who
intended.
the father is?
Yeah, it's meant to be Andre Moore. So
What's
her
the baby's surname Hernandez? Or is
I
Hernandez
think-
the middle name?
I have no idea.
This is getting sneakier and sneakier. Something's not right.
What is also odd is that Carolyn, several years earlier, had a tubal ligation.
Oh,
As I said, another twist in the story. She'd had her tubes tied.
Tubes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She then, though, she said that she'd had 5 pregnancies after that procedure, and it is possible about 1 in 200 women will fall pregnant after a tubal ligation. It's
5
not
times?
100%. Yeah, it can. And she miscarried. Ectopic pregnancies, if you fall pregnant afterwards, are the likely outcome. So it's where the egg is fertilized, but it sits outside of the uterus, and so it causes complications. It'll either break up and die normally, or it could cause infection and you have to go to
So
hospital.
potentially she had an ectopic pregnancy and stole a baby.
Potentially she had a baby. So as I said, they don't all, even if you've had a tubal ligation, it doesn't matter. If you fall pregnant after that, you can carry a baby to term. It's just very uncommon, extremely uncommon.
Yeah.
But I did look it up and it's not impossible. So Carolyn was off with her girl, Alia, and by her account, she was a loving mother who was raising her daughter to be a pageant kid. So she apparently had put her in a private school and she was having acting lessons and She was making, turning her into pageant princess type modelling there. And according to Alia, though, she thought her mother was out at work late at night and all the time, and her older sister sort of was left to parent her. And the older sister didn't really want to because, she was a kid herself. But her memory of her very early years was that she kind of didn't quite feel like she fit in, but she doesn't really remember her mother very much, so from that period of those 6 years. So her sort of impressions were that mum wasn't around that much because she was actually working. She certainly didn't talk about being in a private school nor doing a pageant scene. But anyway.
Probably inappropriate, but are they all potheads? Like, is anyone paying attention to their own lives? I feel like there's a lot of people who don't really know.
In the fairness to Alia, she was only a child when all this takes place.
No, I understand with that for her, yes, but there's so many inconsistencies already.
Sure are. We go back to the 6 years later, right? So we're in 2004. Luz has the hair samples. She is now absolutely convinced that the child she saw at the party was her missing baby, and she went around trying to get someone to take her seriously. She took her story to a local politician, Angel Cruz, who, whilst being pretty sceptical about it, did think there might be something in it. So he called the police, who were in the Special Victims Unit.
Donut shop.
Oh.
SVU.
Dun dun. No, they weren't in the donut shop. They were special victims, and they started to investigate. So they bring her in and, sort of had a chat, and then they sort of
bring her in, Luz.
And they at first they're like, oh, yeah, crackpot. But the more they listen to her, they're like, oh, actually, this does sound like there's something in it. Of course, they can't use the hair, as I said, because they don't have consent. They don't even have a reason to be looking at it. They have no warrant. They have no case.
Yeah. Okay.
Did they go and get Benson? Because Benson would have got to the bottom of it like that.
Yeah, but she would have done it with the appropriate police procedure, because that's the whole point about the show. It's a police procedure show.
Yeah.
She's all over that.
Olivia's very good.
Olivia Benson.
So they went around to all the... Firstly, they just started to see whether there is actually anything in it, right? Or is she just nuts? And they went around to all the media crews who had covered the story at the time. And, of course, they were quite lucky because it was a bit of a big story about this baby dying in the fire. And so they were able to get the film footage of the house, what it looked like and all the rest of it, and some witness statements. They also spoke to the fire marshal.
Was it Caroline creeping out with a baby in a bag? Oh, I never noticed that before.
It was Caroline in a dingo outfit.
Oh, bad taste.
Too much?
Yep. They spoke to a fire marshal. I don't know that it was the same one. I'm going to suggest it wasn't. Who said that they'd never had a case where human remains were totally destroyed in a fire.
Yeah.
It takes around 14 hours and an intense heat to cremate.
A crematorium.
100 degrees or something.
Now, remember, some crazy amount, but remember it took 4 hours for Greg Lynn to burn the bodies that were already pretty decomposed in the camper killer case. The one we did about 3 weeks ago.
Wangata Valley.
Wangata Valley, yeah. And that's
I've seen it referenced in the last couple of weeks. I've seen it.
And remember, and it wasn't, he didn't get rid of everything. He had to smash up the bones and put it all into a tree trunk. In this case, there was nothing. In this, there's nothing. There's no bone. There's nothing to indicate, that there was a body there. And so
does a baby burn faster than a big
He said
baby?
even a baby,
no.
You would find something. It's in his 30-year career, he'd never seen a case where a person or a baby had perished in a house and he hadn't found some evidence yet. So it all started to actually give credence to the idea that the baby hadn't been killed in the fire at all. Of course, Liz said, I'm pretty suspicious about this bird, Carolyn. She was at my house at the time. She's got a kid who's exactly the same age as my kid would be, who's got the same dimple that my kid had, looks a lot like me when I was a kid, and here's some hair that you can't use, but I'm telling you, that's my daughter. So they go to see Carolyn because it's a pretty good, suspicion they've got, and they've got to investigate it. They called her first, and she's like, yeah, sure, come on over, no problem.
Pop around.
Yeah. But, of course, when they got there, she told them
she
that
was
Alia
gone.
was in the Poconos. So she was out, not available.
In the Poconos?
Poconos, Carla?
Really?
I don't know. I've heard of it. The mountains out in New York. I don't know. What are the Poconos? I don't know.
Go on, map girl, go for it.
I thought it was another metaphor like
Map girl, map
Poconos.
girl.
No, I've definitely map girl.
Poconos. Poconos?
Like Pekingese?
I don't know where it is.
Been chasing park trucks.
Poconos Mountains or Poconos encompass forest, peaks, lakes, and valleys in the U.S. state of Pennsylvania. So that's where Philadelphia is, isn't it, right?
Oh, okay, right. So she was on the Poconos. I'm not quite sure. She must have been on a day trip with someone.
Why do people go to the
allegedly.
Poconos? It offers 4 seasons of endless fun and a tremendous variety of diversions, such as luxurious resorts, fun things to do with the whole family, outdoor adventures, bed and breakfast, and more. Gosh, that was a helpful
Wow.
answer, wasn't it?
That was great. No wonder a 6-year-old's gone there.
No
Well,
wonder.
Maybe she was
Did
doing
she-
a pageant. I don't know.
I thought the opening sentence of going 4 seasons of endless fun
Endless
and tremendous
fun and
variety of diversions.
Tremendous.
Woo! That really got me.
Tremendous.
We should all be
tremendous.
going to Poconos.
I know. It
All
sounds
seasons too.
great. We'll do it. Can we
Nice.
expense it, even though we make no money?
Yeah.
She's in the Poconos, and so they say, "Oh, look, okay, can you just give us her birth certificate?" And says, "Oh, yeah, it's in the boot of my car. Of course, that's where you keep."
No,
important
it's
documents."
not.
So she goes to the boot of her car and she opens it up, and there's all these bags of stuff, and the police sort of look in and they're like she's been packing, and.
Ah.
Oh,
They say,
liar,
she
baby's
says,
not
"Oh,
on
there's
fire.
too much shit in here. I can't find it. Can't help you." And they say, "Okay, never mind." And so they leave. Again, they're more suspicious about this woman at that point. Then they ring her up and say, "We'd like to schedule a new appointment to see you." And she said, "Oh, that's not possible. You'll have to discuss this through my lawyer. And we require a warrant." So she's lawyered up. So the police are like, "Oh, this gets more and more suspect." So they do some more digging. And according to the investigators, she had a history of faking pregnancies and getting child support off ex-boyfriends. They also are the people who discovered the tubal ligation. And whilst that to them seemed like a slam dunk, as I said, it's very rare, but it's not actually impossible to be pregnant
Right.
after the procedure. But we'll get onto that a bit further. So after looking into Carolyn's checkered past, she'd also been charged with arson at one point.
Oh,
Of you and me?
Yeah. No, she'd actually set fire to a closet in her workplace when they had discovered that-
Brilliant.
what had happened is there were checks that were going missing from the bottom of a checkbook. And they'd
And
worked
she
it
put
out
the checkbook in the cupboard.
and set fire to it. Yeah.
Oh my
Obviously
God.
trying to destroy
She's
whatever evidence.
great.
She did get pinged for that one, but that was years
Jeez.
earlier.
goodness me.
She's got a past. And so I'm saying all that
For
this is
sure.
very interesting, and it's certainly making them more suspicious, but they had to get hard evidence. And so
Schmitty, is
they
there a Cert
arranged...
3 in occupational arson?
Not that I'm aware of. And I wouldn't say that she sat that either, because she got done for it. Yeah.
Yeah, she
I
was
mean,
clever.
if you're going to do a qualification in it, you want to make sure you don't get caught. That's the point of doing the qual.
She probably did the first month and then
First unit.
Dropping
yeah,
it from
mate.
because
here.
she was pregnant.
First unit, how to set fire to a closet. Okay, that's all I need to know. I think she used an aerosol can in that case, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. She's got a ciggy lighter out. Yeah. And a hairspray.
Hairspray, yeah. Jeepers.
Made herself a little flamethrower.
Was it hairspray or impulse?
I have no idea, but either works quite well, I've heard. As I said, they need to get hard evidence. So all of this interesting and salacious background that this woman has doesn't actually mean that she's
Doesn't
done...
cut it.
Yeah. So they arranged for
useless.
her, Alia, and her lawyer to come in for a DNA test. One of the other investigators was a bit sus on her.
Hang on, they arranged for Alia and
Well, her
Caroline
mother
to come
Her
in.
mother.
And the lawyer. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So they must have got a warrant for that, yeah?
Yes. At this point,
Yes.
they've got enough
Okay.
evidence to say they suspect her. They've got a warrant. They've called her in to get
Gotcha.
the DNA. Yep.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Carolyn and Alia come in and they go, "Oh, actually, could we just use the bathroom?" And there was an investigator who was working with them, or a detective working with them, who, even before they got there, was like, "I feel like she's going to try and pull a Swiftie on something." So she actually was hiding in the ladies' toilets when they got there. And so Alia and her mother go to the toilet, not knowing that there's a police detective in the stall next to them.
Brilliant.
Oh.
I love this.
And the police detective hears her saying to Alia, "Open your mouth. I've just got to spray this in your mouth. Come on, open your mouth." And then they go out and they do the DNA swab. And it turns out later that the thing she was spraying in her mouth was her own spit.
Oh.
So that her DNA would be lining the kid's mouth.
in there.
Yeah. So, of
What a
course,
link. mold.
isn't that revolting? It's so gross.
Oh.
At this point, because the detective had been in there, she alerts him and says, "I think that you'll have to do it again."
Foul play.
Yeah. So they wait a while, I guess, or make the poor
wash
kid
'em.
take
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
Listerine or whatever it is that they do, and they take another swab. And at the time, this is 2004-ish, at that time, DNA is pretty new too, of being used, and it's taking 10 weeks or something for a
Oh,
DNA
God.
test. It's a long time to get a DNA test turned around. These guys, Special Victims Unit, they insist that they get it turned around real quick, and it's back to them, I think, within 28 or 48 hours. So they put
Wow. Go Benson.
rush
Did
on
you
it.
say 28 or 48?
I don't
Yep.
know, possibly 24
A
or
day
48
and 4
hours.
hours, 2 days. I don't know.
Very specific. We want it back in 28 hours.
It was a window.
Yeah.
The point being, yes, it was expressly done. So they get the DNA results back, and lo and behold, it's a match to Luz. So it turns out
She is the worst kind of person.
that that Alia is Delimar, and the baby was stolen, didn't die in the fire, and Luz was not crazy.
Did she
So
start
how did she
the
steal
fire?
her? Where was she? Was she stuck in a car? Did she take her out of the room,
Multiple
put her somewhere?
stories as to how that
right.
could have happened. So we'll get onto that.
Of course there is. God forbid anything would be straightforward.
Yeah, Carolyn was arrested, obviously, and after a short time, Alia was returned to her biological mother. And of course, her biological mother insisted on calling her Delimar. And what sounds like a happy ending, though, was the beginning of a huge disruption in the life of the victim, who is Delimar and Alia. Luz, as I said, spoke Spanish. Delimar spoke pretty much only English. She suddenly found herself with a stranger for a mother and 3 older brothers, rather than the siblings she'd grown up with and the older sister that she was actually very close to. Even by her own account, she was pretty badly behaved. And she'd grown up in a household with few routines and boundaries, and suddenly she had to eat her meals at the table and at specific times. And like she said that she wasn't even used to eating necessarily in a day. Not that the mum was starving her, but that she didn't have those sort of routines. So if she didn't want to eat the food, the mum, Luz, would be like, "Do you not like my cooking? What's wrong?" And so it built over time a feeling of not being what her mother wanted her to be, and not fitting in, and not being the perfect girl that Luz was looking for. And so over time, it did build a significant sort of emotional and psychological issue for Delimar / Alia. And they used to have this sort of psychological issue created, of course, conflict. And so she would play up quite a lot, and even by her own account, she was pretty naughty. And by the time she was 14, she was skipping school, and she wasn't going home when she was supposed to. And the Department of Human Services caught up with her, and because, you can't be truant from school, and they removed her from Luz's custody, and she went into a group home. So her mum lost her as a baby, got her back at age
Jesus.
6, and lost her again at 14. Now, whilst it is often seen that going into the system, being foster care or human services, etc., or group homes, is a terrible thing, it turned out to be the best thing for Delimar. She suddenly had the opportunity to have space. She didn't have the oppression of feeling like she wasn't good enough for her mother or wasn't perfect. She didn't have all of that around her. So she did have access to programs and services like therapy, where she was able to work through a lot of the things that had happened and its impact on her. As it turned out, she ended up getting a degree. She became a therapist herself, and she got an apartment, and she gained her independence. And
Go
she
Delimar.
and her mother, Luz, her biological mother, have a brilliant relationship now. So they've
Oh,
kind
that's
of
good.
rebuilt. Yeah.
Oh,
And things are really good for them. And Delimar got married, I think, relatively recently. And so her life is good. But what of Carolyn? And what
Molly?
actually happened on that night?
Do tell.
Well, if you were hoping for a clear version of events, I'm going to have to disappoint you. Carolyn has stuck to her version of what happened that night ever since being arrested in 2004. According to her, she was pregnant, but no one knows what happened to the baby, including Carolyn. When she was told Alia or Delimar wasn't hers, she said, "Well, where's my baby then?"
Oh, she's awful.
Her boyfriend at the time, Andre, said he saw her.
3,000.
Andre 3000 said he saw her with a preggy belly, and he'd actually felt the baby kicking.
What when he
And
was,
I think he said he'd listened to the heartbeat. You know when people get right up on your guts and have
Yeah.
a listen? I reckon, well, he felt the baby kicking. Maybe she had a bit of wind. I don't know.
Yep.
Anyway, he'd always believed that Alia was his daughter and apparently hired a private detective to find out what had happened to his child. It is confusing, though, as Carolyn was quoted in an article from the Philadelphia Daily News in 2005 saying that Pedro had given her the baby that night and that Luz had been there and witnessed it all. She didn't explain what had happened to the baby she was supposed to have given birth to. Some say she had a phantom pregnancy, which is pseudocyesis and is very rare. And also impressive if her boyfriend felt the phantom baby kicking, but as I say, she could have just had gas. She was quoted in that article saying that she spoke to Pedro a couple of days before the fire and said, "I think I lost my baby." And he said, "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay."
You can have mine.
Take
We've got a
ours.
spare one.
Then she said she'd given birth to a stillborn baby, but her medical records from the time made no reference of a pregnancy or stillbirth. On the night of the fire, she went to Pedro's for him to have a look at her headlight, and while she was there, she held the baby, being Delimar, and had a brief chat with Luz. And Pedro asked her to leave with him to talk about a job, but really, he wanted her to drive him to get drugs and then drop him back.
Aha.
Yeah. Well, this is her version of events.
Yeah,
so
no, but
I'm
just
not
the
really
word
sure.
drugs. I figured there's a bit of drug action going on, but
It could be. She said he brought the baby out, and as she had a car seat because she'd expected her own baby, so she'd already put a kid's baby chair in the back of her
Dear
car.
G Chambers, what a coincidence. Because you don't, you do that so far in advance. Oh, let's get it all ready now. No.
yeah.
So they put the baby in the car seat and they drove off. And she reckons Luz saw this, and another unidentified girl came up screaming at him, "What about the baby?" And then they put that angry woman in the car and gave her a lift to a bar. And then they went off to some friend's place. She left Pedro there and went
I mean,
back
it all
to...
sounds fine so far.
Well, then she realises when
Just
she's
a normal
dropping...
night.
Exactly. When she's dropping Pedro off at this friend's place, probably to get the drugs, she realises she's left her purse behind back at the house.
Oh.
So she drives back to the house with the baby still in the car seat. And when she
just
gets back
continues
to
on to
their house...
Jersey.
No, when she gets back to the house, it's on fire. And Pedro's mum, who was still alive at the time, came up to her and said, "Go get Pedro." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And Luz was screaming about her kids being in the house. You know, she's really worried about the kids. Then she tried to get into, this is Luz, tried to get into the house and her face was burned. I've also heard versions of Carolyn saying that Luz wasn't even there when all this happened. So God knows, right? Carolyn went
But
and
there's
got
a report
Pedro.
that says she's burnt her face, isn't there?
She definitely burned
Police
her face.
report, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the suggestion was that she wasn't there at the beginning, and then she runs up. She comes up. The house is on
Arrives,
fire, and
yeah.
she runs in, but she wasn't in the house when the fire started. Was one of the
Right,
versions.
gotcha.
I'm telling you, it's
Okay.
not very clear.
No.
So, in this story, in this version, the baby is in the car seat, right, safe and sound. So she goes back to get Pedro, and she tells him about the fire, and he jumps in the car as quick as possible and says, "We've got to get back." And then on the way there, he says, "Oh, look, shit, it's all my fault. I'd been mucking around with the wires." So he sort of makes that allusion to whether it's the homemade extension lead or whatever he'd done on the heater. Then Pedro says to her, "Oh, look, you should just go home and take the baby." So she went back to the scene of the fire to check everyone was okay, and Luz was being treated for her burns. And Carolyn, I'm quoting, said, "Not once did she say anything about the baby. All she was worried about was the burn on her face." According to Luz, when Carolyn came back to get her purse, the house wasn't on fire, and she went upstairs to use the bathroom and then left. And then the house caught fire.
Hairspray trick. Or what was the other one?
Impulse.
Impulse, yeah.
So she learned that at occupational arson.
Well, someone tried to say, and there's no evidence of this, that she'd put an aerosol can in front of the heater, and so acid heated up, it exploded. But that would have, I think, taken some time. And
wouldn't she
she'd
have
run
got
upstairs to go to the toilet and then put an aerosol can in front of it and gone down, and it lit fire almost immediately. I think that's just,
It's
what's
consistent
the word?
with her MO, though,
Poppycock?
isn't it? The aerosol fire starter.
What's the word I'm looking for, Swanee?
What?
I don't know.
Making shit up. I think that's just someone making shit up
Poppycock.
to make it
Fabrication.
fit. Yeah.
Fabricated.
Carolyn did take the baby home, and she told everyone it was hers, and she kept that baby for 6 years and raised it as her own. She was found guilty of kidnapping and was sentenced to 30 years in jail with the possibility of parole
Whoa.
in 2014, which I do believe she was granted. But it's hard to find anything post 2005, and the only references are from some TikToker So I'm not sure if that's true. And
What?
another person said she died of cancer, but again, I'm no idea if that's correct or not.
Schmitty, was TikTok in your sources?
No, because I don't believe it's true. I have no idea whether they're right or wrong. It's like Reddit, you know. You read a thread and someone says, oh, no, this is what happened. There's no reference. There's no proof. It's just like, oh, no, they died of cancer. It's like, did they? I don't know.
Did they, though? Yeah.
Yeah, and I couldn't, quite often I will look at Find a Grave, which does help me find where people are.
What?
There's a website
God.
called Find a Grave, and you can actually... There's usually a photo or at least
Swanee,
a
have you ever done that?
No.
I've only ever done it in relation to researching
Schmitty.
stories for this show.
Just seeing if you,
Yeah,
victim.
righto.
If you're not
Still
buried.
there,
Where did
Why
you
would
find
you
out
use
about
that?
it, though?
Could you repeat that? Why, who?
Sometimes it pops up, like you're searching for something and it Find a Grave comes up, and if you click on it, it
Not
shows you
once.
sometimes a photo of the grave. I have used it when I'm trying to work out who someone's parents are. Or when they're born, like sometimes you don't
Okay.
get a date of birth, and if you
Wow.
find the grave, it'll
In-
be on the date on the grave.
In real life or just researching?
Researching.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we've seen this before, but anyway, let's just go with what you say.
I can't help it if my research methodology is very thorough, you know.
I'm going to check
Just
TikTok
saying.
right
It's
now
really-
just
it
to
really
see
is
if
next
there's
level.
anything different.
Well, I don't really believe TikTok on everything, so yeah. There was some suggestion that Pedro was involved in the kidnapping, beyond Carolyn saying he'd given her the child. But clearly there wasn't enough evidence as he was never charged. Carolyn has been evaluated by psychologists and does suffer from mental health issues.
You don't say.
Drug induced?
No. According to what I read, she seemed to suffer from them post that tubal ligation. It could be hormonal. So, not sure. Anyway, we're left with questions around whether she was ever pregnant. When she thought she was miscarrying, just before the fire incident, and she went to the hospital, apparently they did an ultrasound and they couldn't find any evidence of a pregnancy.
Oh, she's a mole. Her pants are on fire.
Or she's mentally ill
Yeah.
and believes that she was pregnant.
No, because she's got other people that she's taking money from due to false pregnancies. That came out earlier. Her pants are on fire big time.
She's been charged for arson in
Don't like her.
prior.
I'm not buying the mental health thing. I'm sure she's got mental health issues, but most of them are probably because she's such a mole. That's my unprofessional diagnosis. Good chat.
Imagine that if you're like gone to get, seek some help, whatever. It's like
Just a mole.
your problem is you're a mole.
100% you
I was
have
hoping for
mental health
bipolar.
issues.
No, you're a bloody mole.
But this is all yours. You
Right.
mole.
And how do we treat that then?
Yeah, diagnosis, moleosis.
Yeah, but what's the cure for moleosis? Don't be a mole.
A good slap.
Don't be a
thanks.
mole.
Yeah.
Good slap.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. What are your thoughts?
not-
I mean, from my
Not much
perspective,
to it.
well, I mean, it's very kind of unclear.
I'm saying there's a lot to it. That was sarcasm. My God.
I know. But it's like depending on kind of where you sit with various things. Like facts are facts. There was a fire. Baby was missing, not killed.
Facts are from
Baby-
the 90s.
Baby was found being raised by another woman. There was kind of a thing about how the fire brigade had done a shit-ass job by suggesting that she was just being hysterical at the time, because they said you think that the baby wasn't there because of your nerves. They gaslit Elizabeth. Everyone gaslit her, frankly. Then there's this whole suggestion that Pedro's family all gaslit her for several years too, and they were all in on it, and they all knew that the baby had been given to Alia. These are just suggestions, right? There's no evidence of any of this. So, and the fact that Pedro stayed with her and they had another child, I just think...
I feel like we need to go and have a chat to them.
Oh,
I've got a
Nice.
couple of
Bring 'em
questions
in.
for you lot. Yeah.
Can you
Round
get them
table.
on the line?
What kind
And-
of a shit show is this?
Even Luz's story changes a little bit
Yes.
from account to account. So who knows really what happened?
That's the drugs.
The good news is that the baby wasn't killed in a fire,
True.
and that
And they all lived happily ever after.
that she's turned out all right.
Yeah.
With
That's good.
challenging circumstances. There was a Lifetime TV made about it, a Lifetime TV or Lifetime movie made about it. It then propelled sort of Luz and Alia into the celebrity limelight as well. And
Oh.
sorry, I shouldn't say out loud, Delimar. And Delimar just was like, can you just stop coming here? Leave me
Yeah,
alone."
right.
Enough.
I've said enough. I like
Yeah.
Delimar.
I think she's turned out very well, all things
Yeah,
considered.
that's a nice lining, isn't it, for this
Yeah.
story?
I think, Swanee, your little picture that you painted earlier about Carolyn with a tote bag over her shoulder with a baby in it is quite possibly, sneaking down like a Santa sack with a baby in it.
Yeah.
Really?
Sneaking down the stairs and out is probably the most likely
Yeah.
scenario.
The person who I do have some questions for is actually Pedro.
I think, Pedro, there are some questions to be asked. Yeah.
Well, with all that silliness that Caroline then talks about, were they together? Did they really go to drugs? I just want to know if all that stuff really happened, because I would like to know where she was at that point. Versus
He was out. He was definitely
yeah,
out.
Yeah.
Were they doing the
We don't know
horizontal
where it was.
mumbo? Pedro and
Again,
Caroline?
I think Luz at some point thought maybe they
Yeah.
were. But there's lots of, I think maybe they were, because after the fact I'd built this idea in my head that that's a
Root
possibility.
rats.
Well, I don't know that they were root rats.
Root rats.
We
There
don't know.
you
This is the
go.
thing, right?
We don't know anything.
She would have said that actually when she
Well,
was
she
doing
certainly
the
has.
dump.
There's never been any suggestion from Carolyn nor Pedro, but Luz
Okay.
was like, "Oh, I knew it," kind of thing. I don't
Yeah.
think there has, but yeah.
I'm none with Luz. That's right. They were. Again,
I don't know. I think he was
unprofessional
just out.
opinion.
Either getting groceries or drugs or playing dominoes, just out. Carolyn just went and took the baby, and I think the fire was a coincidence. It probably
reckon-
all would have been.
I don't think the fire was a coincidence. Do you think it was
Well,
a coincidence?
No.
that-
God, really?
I know
Caroline's
the-
done that for sure.
I know the
Have you
fire
even
marshal,
researched your own story?
Like,
That's clearly not what
because-
happened.
because I've read several times the fire brigade have said on multiple occasions there is no evidence of arson. It
Doesn't
very
mean it
much
didn't happen.
Okay.
It does look, no. I mean, there was no evidence of a baby being dead either. It
Right.
didn't
Just
happen
faulty wiring.
because
Faulty
it didn't
wiring.
happen. So it does
no
mean it didn't
evidence
happen.
isn't proof that it didn't happen. It just means there's no evidence.
I'm
Very
annoyed with
thought-provoking.
Pedro.
He's not off the hook, is he?
No, I don't know what I want to
Well
do
and
with him,
truly
but
on the
something,
hook.
Something doesn't sit comfortably with me there. For some
Did Pedro
reason.
play rugby?
No, I don't think so.
I don't
'Cause
know
I
that
reckon-
the Puerto
I
Rican
reckon
community
he-
are massively into rugby.
Apparently,
No, but
dominoes.
Pedro might have been.
Dominoes.
I reckon he grabbed the baby and chucked it like a rugby pass to Caroline, who caught it and ran out the door.
And put it in her car seat.
I mean, it's as credible as every other scenario that's been
The
offered
car
so
seat
far.
ready to go. I know.
There was a thing I left out because I couldn't work out if it was true or not. But I think the second time that Luz went up into the bedroom to try to find the baby in the fire scenario, she noted that the bedroom windows were open that opened out to the street. And I don't know if that's significant or not because the place was already on fire at that point.
Was it upstairs?
It was upstairs. There's no ladder or anything.
How tall was Caroline? Like Slender
don't
Man
know.
tall?
No, not tall enough to have reached into an upstairs window and stolen a baby. Maybe.
No, but hang on.
Did
Why
she have
would you
go-go
have the
gadget
windows
legs?
open and then going
And it was a freezing cold night.
heater?
It was a freezing cold
To
night.
heat the room for the child,
That's what Luz
the
said.
baby.
Oh, Luz said we never opened the window. However, like so many other twists and turns in the story, does it add? Does it detract? Is it just another?
Just
Is it
hinders, I
another
think.
brick wall that you end up not understanding what's going on?
Do you reckon between the three of us we could come up with our own version of events? Because
I
it
reckon
seems
we
like
could.
everyone's got a version and none of them agree. What do you actually reckon happened?
Well, if you didn't
No.
have medical records that said she wasn't pregnant, I almost would have gone with Carolyn was pregnant, had a stillbirth, don't know what happened to the baby, was having some kind of postnatal
Trauma. Yeah.
or psychotic break, stole the child,
Yeah.
imagined it being given to her as part of that psychotic break to
Yep.
justify her behaviour and raise the child as her own.
Could it be
That's
possible that...
if there wasn't that whole ultrasound, no proof of baby thing?
Yeah, so I'm going to go she never, ever got pregnant, but she always wanted to, so she kept making that story up. So she was desperately trying to have a baby, could never, often pretended to so that she could get money as well, but then saw an opportunity and took it, so to speak. Pardon the pun.
I mean, it sort of works whether she had a baby or not, because if she was going through a phantom pregnancy because her mind told her she wanted to be pregnant
Yeah.
and she then lost that, whether it was real or not, it was real to her, she still could have had that psychotic break.
I'm annoyed with the family and the friends, the people around it. If you rocked up with a baby one day, people need to be asking questions, and they're not. Do you know what I mean? Where were the responsible adults in all this?
Some people said they never saw evidence of her being pregnant, but then the boyfriend's like, yeah, she had a big swollen belly. She was pregnant. She just had a big poo baby, I think.
Yeah, I reckon that's the case. So
if he saw me now, he'd think I was pregnant. He'd think I'm 8 months pregnant right now if he saw me.
After a bit of white bread, I swell up like nothing on earth.
Yeah, right. I've got a friend who was having a whole lot of health issues and kept going to the doctor. And it wasn't until she was 8 months pregnant that they diagnosed her as being pregnant. And so she literally had a baby, on a 4-week pregnancy, a 4-week known pregnancy.
Oh, my God.
So, that sort of stuff is... This was in the, 90s maybe? No, it wouldn't be that old. So it would be in the 2000s.
Remember what was her name? Kelly?
Yes.
Curious
Kelly
Case.
Swimmer. Kelly Underwood.
Kelly from Sydney.
Was it
Curious
Kelly
Case
Lane?
of Kelly Lane.
Kelly
Lane,
Lane.
that's it.
Yeah, who was pregnant and
Yes.
didn't look like it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing about pregnancy. It's not always standard that you can
No.
see immediately that someone's pregnant.
I just put my professional judgy pants on when I hear that somebody has said that they were pregnant to get money from ex-partners. So I think that she's just got shit form. And so I'm going to say that that's the consistent theme here.
That was said by the two investigators, and it may or may
was it?
not. I mean, I'm not saying that
Not
it's
by ex.
not true, but they were forming a story that supported them getting to the DNA bit. And so they were just looking, they were really digging up dirt.
She's got nothing good going for her so far, though.
She stole a baby. I mean, she stole someone's kid. One way or the other, however you look at it, whatever the extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, and there's other stories that are consistent with that kind of shit behaviour around babies. So I'm going to go with everything that everyone else is saying about her is true. Not for any direct evidence, but circumstantial evidence, Your Honour.
And what are you going to do for a sentencing?
Wow.
Oh, it's hard.
I'm going to send her to, not forever, but I think I'm going to send her to, like, a bit like the 10-year period that she had actually in jail, trial by Wine World. And I'm going to send her to our new maternity hospital in Trial by Wine World, which we're building. And we'll have built it by the time we send her there. And what you find in the maternity ward, when you go, in the old days, you'd go in and there'd be all those little, not incubators, what do you call them? Cribs with little babies in them. Humidity cribs.
Humidity cribs, yeah.
Whatever they're called. Filled with chuckies. And so she... that had the appropriate...
Child or Chucky, ouch.
She can take a Chucky home and raise a Chucky for 6 years. That'll do, because by the end of that's pretty good.
Is she going to survive? Is Chucky going to get her?
No, she'll survive, but she'll be not wanting to steal another child ever again after that. So what about you guys? Got a sentence?
I was thinking that we could turn her into a stork and make her spend her life delivering everyone else's babies.
That's
you know how they used to say...
Giving them, yeah.
She's got to keep giving babies away rather than stealing
that's
them.
almost a psychological nut punch.
Wow.
Imagine if some Puerto Rican woman called Carolyn from New Jersey turned up with your new baby.
Dressed as a stork.
Thanks. Not quite what I was expecting, but for me? Okay. What the fuck was at the front door? Some Puerto Rican woman from Jersey just delivered us our baby.
I feel like you could find her hanging around Brunswick train station too, going, have you got 7 babies for me?
Cigarettes for me?
Gosh.
I do like it. Swanee, you're up.
I'm struggling.
Because she thinks she's such an upstanding citizen, you don't want to
No,
punish her.
I don't really like any of them, if the truth be known, except her daughter. Isn't that awful? I don't know what it is. They're just everybody let me down somewhere in this story. I do feel really let down by these people. I think they need to take a bit of a look at themselves and think if they had had their shit sorted out to start with, and I don't know, that's a little bit unfair on Luz,
judgy.
of course.
Luz.
Yeah, bit judgy there.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's got to do with, I guess, the inconsistencies across the way the story is told by different people.
It doesn't
makes
help,
it very,
yeah.
very complicated. I don't know, but I think that with Carolyn, she's so deluded. If she's got to that point, I think that she is clearly mentally ill. But what bugs me about this stuff is that she's mentally ill and she's stolen a child, and then she's obviously a mother, although if I understand it, Alia was saying that her mum wasn't around a lot, but I don't know if that leads into the fact that it's just because she was working hard or because she was
She was
absent because she
working
had
hard.
mental issues.
No, I think she was working.
Okay. Well,
And she
then,
had-
you know what?
she had
You're just
2 or 3
mentally ill at
other
the
kids.
time. Yeah, so you're just mentally ill at the time of taking out the child. You know, there's
No, I think she's
that's
mentally ill the whole time.
yeah, but that's what bothers me. But you can still maintain a normal life after doing something so horrendous as stealing at someone's child. You know what someone can do for her? Someone can put something awful in her mouth. They can spray it in there like she did to her daughter.
Bingo.
There you go. I've got it.
Nice.
That's her punishment.
Yeah. Any ideas of what it would be?
I have an idea. I have
What?
an
Go
idea.
on.
What?
This is so revolting, but I don't know if you've experienced this with your dogs, but I have before.
Oh, God.
My dog, when he gets a
Eats
fright,
poo.
when he gets a fright, he must, I don't know, clench his buttocks or something, and he has his anal glands excrete a fluid
Oh.
that smells like off oyster sauce.
Oh my God.
When you take your dog to the vet, they'll squeeze the dog's anal
Yes, I know
glands to
that.
clean them out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
and that's the,
No, they
the
won't.
smell. Yeah, they do, and the smell of that.
no.
That's what
Anal
we
gland fluid.
put.
I like
anal
it.
gland, dog anal gland fluid. We'll pop it in a little bottle, and she can have that sprayed in her mouth.
Oh,
There you
that
go.
is
Yep.
wrong.
Yeah, give her a healthy dose of anal gland fluid.
Anal gland
Spray it.
juice.
And she's got it, and it's constant. Like, just excuse me, I'm out in public. Go to sit for it's like a Listerine mint. Oh,
So revolting.
that is brilliant. Oh,
Oh, God. I don't think it should be from a bottle. It should be from like a Pez dispenser that looks like a dog's ass. So that when she gets it out and goes, oh, excuse me, I'm just going to spray into my mouth.
oh, don't mind me.
Everyone can see what it is.
I'm on a squirt every 15 minutes. Yeah.
Or you know how they have perfume bottles that are shaped like bodies? Maybe
Yes,
you have
just
a
a
perfume
bum
bottle
hole.
that's shaped like a dog's ass with the tail and everything.
Oh, instead of Jean-Paul Gaultier, it'd be like
Gaultier.
Yeah, maybe she pulls the
Gaultier,
tail
they're like
to squirt it into her mouth.
Jean-Paul Poupier. I don't know.
I know, but Gautier.
He's going to
Yuck.
Oh
Good
my
one.
god!
That was
All
a
right.
cracker.
It was. Well
Alright.
done, Schmitty.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, and as we say every week, miss you already.
Miss you already.
Ciao.
I know, but Gautier.
Oh.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.